Hi, this is Roger. Thanks for dropping by. Two things today. I know there's three plants there, but two things I want to talk about. And one of them is, depending on the orchid type and even down to the individual species within that type possibly, I've often said that choosing the right media for your own environment can be the difference between progress and failure, or even success and failure, or plants in a mediocre state that just don't seem to progress. And this can often be the choice of media for that orchid in your environment. Now, although this isn't scientific, point two, this is a practical thing. My environment's changed dramatically. In my previous environment, I tried over many years growing Paphiopedilums with mediocre towards failure, success, no success really, mediocre plants, plants not doing well, plants slowly but surely going downhill, and some miserable failures within that. So I stopped having them. Since I got here, I did a trip to Burnham's with no intentions of buying anything, but to support the nursery and everything. If I go there, I come away with some plants, even if I didn't intend buying any. I don't go there to buy specifically very often. And one of those trips, I decided to spend a little bit, buy some plants, and there were some nice Paphiopedilums, blackjack. They look good, they look like pretty good plants. They were all in bloom. I thought, let's have one of them and give them a try. Well, this was the plant here, and since I've had it, it seems to be doing very well, quite honestly. It's got good new growths coming. So we've got a growth here that hasn't bloomed, another new one here, and another one here that hasn't bloomed. That I would say that's a spike coming, personally. If it's not a spike, it must be a pair of leaves, but I think that's a spike. So it looks like we're growing a bloom. This will be my first Paphiopedilum bloom that I've produced myself for many a year. But what I really want to talk about is the media choice. Now, when I repotted this, I wasn't sure what to do, and I thought, well, we've had some success with the mixture of moss, small bark and perlite, so that's what I thought I'd try. That's what you call a root system. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 growing tips in that section alone. 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 growing tips, 13 new roots progressing. Now, in my old place, nothing ever did that well. Nothing ever did that well. So I'm over the moon with that. I class that as a success. We've got a bloom coming, providing it doesn't blast, and I suspect we will probably have blooms on at least one of the other new growths, possibly this one, maybe not this one. We shall see. Nice patterning on the leaves. Leaves darken as they get older, or these might be the colour of the leaves produced in my environment with my light and my humidity. Yeah, that's a possibility. As I said, this isn't science. I've even got roots coming out the bottom of the pot. I've never had a path grow a set of roots like that ever before. Now, back at Wisley, some people put their hands in their pockets and very kindly gave me some money, donated some money to the channel to enable me to come back with some plants from Wisley, because the traders there would have enabled me to have a lot more choice than I would normally have. I mean, Burnham's have a wide choice of orchids, but it's a set choice. It doesn't vary much if at all, quite honestly. So anyway, following on from the success of that Paph, the Paphiopedilum and Fragmopedium specialist was there. I can never remember the guy's name. I wish I could, because I know him quite well. But he was there, and I decided to get one of his plants. It was in bloom at the time. It's a species, or a variety of a species, and I haven't repotted it. But since it came here, we've got a new growth there, sorry, new root there, new root there, and a new root there. So this has some new roots starting and a new growth starting. Those two could go together, but I don't know because I haven't taken it out of its rubbish pot. We are now going to do that. We're going to take that out of its pot, and it's going in a better pot in the mix that Blackjack is in, because it seems to be working well. This one is in active growth, so it should take to its repot quite nicely. So that's what we're here to do, repot that one. And in addition to that, I must have some coffee. In addition to that, we have this one, which as a plant goes for a purchase is pretty good stuff. The number of new growths is many. Now this came from Alan's collection, and I bought it at the Wessex Orchid Society auction, but I have a problem with it. I don't see, well actually I do, I tell a lie. Since I last looked, there is a new growth tip there. Now with all these new growths on this plant, that should be producing a mass of new roots, and I don't see them. But what I do see is that when I water this, a pretty heavy brown stain comes out the bottom of the pot. So I don't know what it's in, but I don't like it. You know that I sort of water a few plants at a time, reusing water. Well, when I water this, I have to throw the water away because I'm not putting what comes out the bottom in any of my other orchids. So it's causing me a problem at the moment, this one. I also am a trifle worried about the paleness of some of these leaves and some of the patchiness showing on them. An unscientific, unsubstantiated guess is that we may have some nutrient deficiencies going on here, and I think that may well be as a consequence of what this has been potted in my environment. Again, this pot feels heavy, which implies it's wet. The other two, this one is almost bone dry because of what it's in. The other one, the Blackjack that we looked at, is heading towards dryness, but it will come round to its watering run soon. Not yet. And this one is heavy, it's wet. So we're going to repot that. Now I'm taking a risk with both of these. It's always a risk repotting, especially when it's an unknown plant. And this, I'll put a pop-up of the name because I haven't got a tag in it. I will do a tag for it. In fact, I'll have to do a tag for all three, quite honestly, when I've finished messing about with them. But this one has a long name because it's a variety of a species. And it would probably, apart from that specialist guy whose nursery this came from, you probably wouldn't be able to get it. Was a relatively recent import. And multifloral, lovely attractive blooms, simplistic blooms as paths go, but I liked it a lot. So we're going to repot those two. And obviously with repotting, the first thing we do is get them out of the pot. I'm going to leave this big one till second because it will make a mess, whereas this one won't. This one is only in this clay pot to stop it falling over because of the rubbish pot it's actually in. It will come out of its pot very easily. And I should be able to shake a lot of this media off. I'm treating this with kid gloves yeah, we've got a couple of nice new roots growing there. I'm just trying to work out whether they are branches of existing. There's another one just starting here, and another one round the back, and 2 down the bottom, 3 down the bottom that I hadn't seen. So we have an active root system. We like that. I'm just teasing out as much of this media as possible. You have to go careful with Paphiopedilums because they have hairy roots and they really do cling on. And if you force old media off, you know, by tearing, you do actually tear the roots and it damages them. You've got to go very careful. Right, now there are some dead roots here, but we're going to have to go very careful because on paths, what looks like a dead root can often have a new growth farther down that root. So you start at the end that you think the root's dead and track it back. And don't go back too far unless you're sure. You might be able to find an example. Probably not. So I don't think many of these roots will get cut off, quite honestly. Some very obvious ones. But yeah, as I said, you do need to go careful tracking them back to make sure they haven't got any signs of growth anywhere along their length. And if they still feel firm, then quite honestly leave them alone whether they've got any new growth showing or not. If they're firm, leave them alone. They may branch out. And if they have a dead bit that is preceded by what looks like a good bit, then only cut the dead bit off. Like this one. This one's furry and hairy and firm, but it had a dead end. So we just take the end off, because it may well shoot out. This bit's dead, but see what I mean? This bit's dead, but following it back, it's got 2 new roots coming. So we only go back to there. Just go back to the bit where it changes its mind and goes from dead to live. And that's all. Stuff going on around here where it looks like that's a good one. That was the problem. I had a dead one there, but there were live shoots, but they were twisted round each other, so we go careful. We'll leave that bit. I think that's good enough. Yeah. And then all we need to do, where the roots move and are not rigid, what you can do is make sure the tips are pointing downwards into the pot. So I've just found another dead one. And that one goes back to there. So, not bad. We've got a manky leaf here that is in fact what's left of what was once a growth, and it's loose. So it has all the hallmarks of potentially being able to rot at that point. So I'm going to take the leaf itself off. Yeah, I think that was once an old growth. So we have our new growth and we have new roots. And I'm more than happy with that root system. I just don't like this one root here. I wish I could find its end. No, see now, that's the example I wanted. This bit here looks dead. It's crispy, but look what's on the end of it. If I'd cut that off near the top, I'd have removed 3 growing tips. Go careful. That's what I'm on about. Look at what you're doing, analyse and find out. So good little root system there. We'll put that to one side. And that was in quite large bark and grow stones. Now, I can't get grow stones anymore, so before I chuck the rubbish in here, I'm I'm going to collect them up, because I'm having trouble getting. I see pictures on places like eBay of what looks like the right thing, but unless you can get hold of it and pick it up and touch it, you're never quite sure what you're getting, especially on eBay. People will bundle up any old rubbish and sell it to you on eBay. So I'm just gathering up as much of this as I can. That's a bit tedious as far as the filming is concerned, but I will then just put that in some boiling water, sterilise it and put it in with my other grow stones that I have got, because I do have some, but I haven't got many. Don't use them very often. Tend to be using the perlite nowadays, because I've got a huge big tub of that for next to no money. So right, so there we go. We'll put that to one side. Right, now we'll see what's going on with this one. Now it's in a pot that's got very little aeration. Now you have to bear in mind with Paphiopedilums, especially with hybrids, you're never quite sure what you're going to get. Now Helvetia, which is what this is, or Helvetia, I'll have to look that up because I'm not sure on the spelling here. I assume is a species, and when it's a species you need to have a look and try and find out where it comes from, because a lot of paphs grow on rocky outcrops, you know, with water breaking through and running down, and they find themselves on little ledges and places like that, so they're quite wet all the time, but those rocky outcrops are often limestone, so they don't like acidity at all. However, it's been discovered that quite a few of them that live on these little ledges, there's quite a bit of debris, dead leaves and stuff that's in around the roots on that ledge. So although it's limestone runoff water-wise, there is some acidity provided by the breaking down of that basically, you know, leaf breakdown and things like that. So have a look and see. Some of them grow on forest floors. Well, that's not going to be alkaline, is it? Loads of dead leaves everywhere. It's going to be more acidic. So it does pay to try and find out which you've got. Right, the first thing was, unless my eyes deceive me, something, I don't know what, rather large, just ran off of here down into that pot, and I don't know what it was, so I'm going to put that to one side. Now this is very wet, and this looks like coir. There's a bit of all sorts going on here, but this is where the brown staining's coming from, definitely. It's the actual media, and so far I haven't seen any good roots. This isn't a dead root system, but I don't see any active root growth. And we've got a live root tip there, and there's another one here near the top of the plant. But compared with the others we've looked at, this is not such a good root system. But it is. I'm just being pedantic here. It's a good root system. It just hasn't got a lot of active growing tips. It's also got quite a few dead roots, papery ones that we will have to trim these off. Yes, quite a few papery ones that will have to be trimmed. I'm not putting them back in the pot. Around the other side of the plant, just to make sure we get all the media off. Yeah, there's some new root growth near the base of the plant. That's good. So this will generate a nice root system, providing it's happy with the media it's in. And I'm not sure it was that happy in this media. So I'm going to put it down again, because I work better with these, starting at the bottom and working upwards. So we find these papery ones and go careful as we work upwards, because there is new root growth up near the base. You just feel them. If they're papery, then trace them back until they're either not papery anymore, in other words you cut the end off, or they get back near the base when you can trim them sort of close to the base. And by trimming the papery ones off, you also leave a nice lot of space for the new ones to grow into. That one's papery to there. After that it's solid. That looks bad and it's not, it's still solid. So that's this side done. And we'll turn it over, have a look around this side. Papery. Again. Just that bit. So a good root here with growing root tips, but this bit sticking out the side has gone. That one's gone up to halfway. That one's gone to halfway. That one I'm going to push back. Right, I'm happy with that now. So we do have some good roots. We've got new growths coming up all over the place here. There's another, look, you can see an embryo new growth there in between those leaves coming from here, all white where it was underneath, not getting any light, and little tiny green tips at the top. So relatively new growth here, new roots coming. So I think the base of this plant was also a bit wet because the media is sort of right up to the top of the base of the plant. So we'll try and get some of that out as well, without knocking that new growth off. Okay, so that's cleaned that up a bit. Easily, because of what this is, that would split into 3 still reasonable plants, all with new growths, 2 to be sold. I'm going to keep this as what hopefully could grow into a specimen plant. You know, there's a lot of new growths here that are roughly the same size, like there and there. And that size new growth is another one here and possibly here. So potentially they could all bloom at the same time. That would be pretty stunning, wouldn't it? So there we go. We've got one wayward root here that's bendy enough to be able to do that with, to make sure it goes in a pot. The new root tips can go somewhere. Yeah, so that's turned out reasonable. But the problem with this was I don't know what it was. So we'll clear up the mess and come back with some media and get these 2 potted up. I'll be back. Okay, I'm back. A little break, a breakette, a brakelet, and myself some pots and some media sorted out. Will you stand up? Thank you. Right, we'll do the easy one first. I've got some moss soaking. I've got small bark and perlite pre-mixed. I've already done that bit because the tub for the perlite is about this big and it sort of gets in the way, shall we say. Right, so we now want some moss. I always tear my moss up and wring it out. Now you know, anybody who's been following the channel long enough will know that I tend to like to use dry media when repotting, because when it's dry it falls in between the roots very easily, and I tend to try and repot orchids that haven't been watered recently so that they're relatively dry, and that dryness all around combinations of means that you very rarely get air gaps. The roots naturally fall into the gaps. Sorry, the bark media naturally falls into the gaps, and it doesn't take a lot of poking them, pressing them, shoving around, which can damage your roots. Even if it doesn't snap them, it can still bruise them. So try not to do that. And I break my moss up into smaller pieces so that it distributes throughout the media more evenly. If you leave it in long strands, you tend to get parts of the pot that are nearly all moss and other parts that haven't got any. Bits of grass and stuff in here. So I tend to break mine up so that it distributes nicely. That's the only reason I do it. It's not for any other reason than that. In smaller pieces, it's more evenly spread throughout the pot, which means that most of the roots have got access to the moss, which is where most of the moisture is held, because this bark won't hold moisture for probably 2 months. It'll get wet, but then it will try and dry really quickly, and the perlite and the moss will stop that happening. So the roots have got moisture without being soggy. What does that look like? Nah, need some more. It's a look. It's not measured. You can see there's no sort of measurements going on here. It's a look and a feel. And I've found, since I started using this moss again, the New Zealand sphagnum moss, Besgrow or Beesgrow, however you want to say it, I have noticed that this mix, the small bark, ripped up moss and perlite, generates good root systems on many different types of orchids. So far, I haven't found any that don't like it. Mind you, I don't think I've stuck any things like Cattleyas in it. But, you know, you have to stop and think, what am I doing to my orchid? What is it going in this pot for? Now, if I had a Cattleya that I'd recently bought and I slipped it out of its pot, hoping to see a nice root system, and I found a pot full of dead or non-existent roots, that Cattleya becomes a rescue straight away. And a rescue Cattleya can quite happily sit in moss to get the roots going again. Constant moisture, still with some air, not soggy, will help new roots grow. There's something about the sphagnum that helps roots grow. And then once your roots get going, you can think about potting it up in your normal media, or perhaps a halfway stage. You know, a mixture of some moss and bark. Let the roots really get going, and then move it on to whatever you keep your Cattleyas in. Just bark, for a lot of people. So do it in stages, but you know, you have to ask, what state is this plant in? Why is it going in this pot, in this media? We'll get that out of the way. Right, so this one's going in this pot. Now that is a little bit large, but the next size down I'd end up probably breaking some of those roots to get it in there. A pot halfway between the two would have been perfect, but I haven't got any, so it's going in there. No crocking, because the roots on these will find their way down to the bottom of the pot without any help at all. They just do. Right, so this is the back of the plant, and although it's the back of the plant, because the roots have curled round in their previous pot, there are roots round the back of the plant, and round the sides of the plant, and round the front of the plant. So they're all getting this mix. And then what we don't do with Paphiopedilum roots is press. We try and get it to settle. Oh, itchy eye. We try and get it to settle in between the roots by tapping rather than pressing down. These roots can bend to a point, but they are also classed as quite brittle, so they will break. If they break, they will often branch out a bit higher, you know, above the break basically. So it's not the end of the world, but it's better that they don't have to. It's better that the roots you've got are maintained. So I'm just bringing it up to the base of the plant without burying the base of the plant. And then I'll water that in and it will settle it down. I'm just going to find a little bit of bark with very little moss in, just to put over the top. It helps stop the algae form. Just pick the moss out just so that I've got a sprinkle to go over the top. As I say, it just helps stop the algae forming. Right, so that's that one done. And that one has a new tag. So we will pop that in. And Mr. Blackjack over here, that was only got out for looking at, not doing anything to it today, but that has a new tag as well. So we'll pop that in. Trying to find, I always try and put the tag in like the old part of the plant so that it doesn't get in the way. So that's Blackjack. So that's those two with their new tags. And now, get that out of the way, we pot up this one. Now this is all plant and very little roots. And as a consequence, the plant is going to sit on the rim of the pot. So the media's got to come up to meet the plant. So on this one, I didn't bring it in, but I will. I'm just going to get some medium bark for this one to stop the air cone getting blocked up, and the fact that the roots are shallow relative to the size of the pot. And we'll put some of the good stuff in. And then we've got to sit this on top, making sure that all the roots tuck in carefully, because there are root tips right near the top of the plant here. Now I've got a very fiddly job to get this media down in the centre of the root system, and I will have to poke around, but luckily the roots go down like an upside down hand with a thumb missing, so there's like a gap on one side of the plant where I can tease this media in to the centre without having to bend any roots out of the way. And then once I'm reasonably confident the centre is filled up, we can move on to round the outside of the plant. And this is again, I'll try and get it in there using tapping. Very difficult when all the leaves are like this and they're actually right on the top of the plant. But sometimes you just got to work with what you've got and do the best you can. This is not easy to repot a plant like this that sits on the edge of the pot with fragile roots. Not easy at all. And some of these roots are coming out right at the base of the plant, so it'll be so easy to break those off. I'm just hoping that with this, so there's a root here and it's going to point at the sky. Now whether it will bend over and manage to find its way down into the pot or not, I don't know. Looking at the angle it's coming out at, I doubt it. But we could tip the plant over slightly and at least get it onto the edge of the pot like that. So we need a bit more down this side just to wedge it on. There's one sticking up in the air this side as well. Well, we can't do both. Right, how are we looking? I don't see any air gaps. I think that's going to be okay. We'll water that in, just checking that it does go right up to the sort of base of the plant all the way round, or plants. I think this is all attached. I think it is one plant. There's just a lot of it basically. Right, so we get that watered in. Now I'm just going to press down very gently because the media is right up to the edge of the pot. So as soon as I try and pour water on that, half the media will come out over the side of the pot. So I'm just tucking it down over the edge of the pot. Just very gently, not pressing hard or anything. So there we go, and that's that one done. And there's the new label. Why haven't we got a new label? I'll show you why with a pop-up. Now you can see why I haven't done a label. That will not fit on one of my labels. That's far too much wordage. I've never had a plant with a name that long, ever. You've actually got a species that's actually a variety of that species, which is like the alba form, that has actually been awarded and got a name. So that makes it pretty long. But then that's been crossed back with a sibling that's also been awarded with a name. It's not going to fit on a label. I know what it is, and I have no label for it. And I might be able to find one of my old white labels that I used to have that are very wide and with some very careful, fine writing. I might be able to hand write a label for it. I mean, if ever it blooms really well and goes in the show, it'll have to have a label, so I've got to do it at some point. Anyway, that's playing around with some Paphiopedilums, 2 repots, following on from this one, which, as I said, has done that. And I've now got a Paphiopedilum with more roots than I've ever seen before in this mix. Yeah? So I'm happy with that. Now, when I said about looking things up, I looked up this one, yeah, just to see if this is a suitable media. And first of all, it's a hybrid, hence the capital H. It's not actually a species, it's a hybrid. And it's a hybrid between Chamberlainianum, which is a cool to cold lithophyte. So it grows in very, very cool conditions on rocks. And it's been crossed with Philippinensis, which is a warm to hot grower, and it's a terrestrial. So sort that out then. What media we're going to put that in that's perfect then? Your guess is as good as mine. It's going in what it's got. But when you get a hot grower, warm to hot grower, crossed with a cool to cold grower, all you can do is assume that the genetics have been merged and it therefore becomes intermediate. But that is a guess, because one of those two could be dominant. And if the dominant one is the warm to hot grower, then this might not do as well in this environment. Yeah. However, if it's the cool to cold grower, it should do really well. There we go then, a play around with some Paphiopedilums, a bit of sort of insight into care and a bit of root management, and I'm hoping that that media was causing some problems with nutrient uptake, and that the change of media, which this will get next time this gets watered, it will get a gentle feed, lightweight feed. And I'll probably add CalMag, because 9 times out of 10, if you've got a deficiency due to a media that's too acidic, where the pH is too low, you'll have shut out, yeah, calcium and or magnesium, something like that. So the chances are that's what it's short of, and the fact that the leaves are pale implies a magnesium deficiency. It could be something entirely different. It's very difficult to judge. But that's what I'm going to do for it and see what happens. And I've just seen a tiny little root coming out of this growth here that's above the media. So I'm just going to tuck a bit of moss there. So that root's now under cover and will go down in the pot as a consequence. Another thing I always say, every root on an orchid is precious. If you take that attitude when you're repotting and looking after your orchids, you won't go far wrong, because most problems with orchids stem from below ground. It's trouble in the pot that causes most problems. Too much water, not very often too little, but it can be. Wrong type of media for the plant, too coarse, too fine, not enough air. It's usually in here where the problems are. So we try and avoid them. And when you get a new orchid, there's several schools of thought. I tend to go with the latter. One school of thought is you repot it, give it a couple of weeks to settle into your environment. It's a change of environment. That gets rid of one type of shock with any luck, and then repot. It's a new orchid, you don't know what it's in, you don't know the quality, you don't know how old that media is, you don't know whether it's turning acidic, so you repot as a matter of course. And then there's the other school of thought, which is my school of thought, is if you've got an orchid with a very poor root system that is slowly but surely being lost because of what it's in, if you repot it straight away, that disturbance will probably kill off those roots. However, if that's going to happen anyway, wouldn't it be better to wait for some new roots to start growing? Food for thought. And I will see you next time. Thanks for dropping by. I never thought I'd be doing a video all about Paphiopedilums, I must admit. I've only got 3, but if these 2 become ultra successful like I believe Blackjack is becoming, then I will get more, because obviously they're doing okay here. But I will still stick to my rules for Paphiopedilums, that is, the multiflorals are the ones to go for, because they take so long to push up a spike from a new growth. Sometimes you're looking at a 2-year cycle. Yeah? Your bloom fades away, and either during the end of that bloom's life or just afterwards you'll get a new growth. And that can often take a year or more to mature, and then you've got to wait for the bud to form the spike and open the bloom, which can take months and months. So they're classed as relatively slow, most of them, not all of them. And that's why they've never been that popular for me, but I have to go with what grows well now. And so we'll give these a go. See you next time. Thanks for dropping by.